Ready to unwind? Let's look into the world of books and pixels together. So, in honor of Thomas and the Magic Railroad Day, I have this. Thomas and the Magic Railroad VHS tape. There's the side of it. And here's the back. Feel free to pause and read that if you want to. However, this isn't all that I'll be doing today. In honor of this day, I will be reading the first 4 stories from this big book, Thomas the Tank Engine Story Collection, by the Reverend Wilbur Tawdry. So yes, this is actually a book that you can get. There's a nice blue one on Amazon. Oh, and here's the map of Sodor. Alright, there you go. Here are the stories that are in this. The one we'll be reading is the 3 railway engines. Oh, and here's about the author. And here's about the illustrators. Please feel free to pause and read any of this if you want to. Alright, the 3 railway engines. Our first story, is Edward's Day Out. Once upon a time, there was a little engine called Edward. He lived in a shed with 5 other engines. They were all bigger than Edward and boasted about it. The driver won't choose you again, they said. He wants big, strong engines like us. Edward had not been let out for a very long time. He began to feel sad. Just then the driver and fireman came along to start work. The driver looked at Edward. "Why are you sad?" he asked. "Would you like to come out today?" "Yes, please," said Edward. So the fireman lit the fire and made a nice lot of steam. Then the driver pulled the lever and Edward puffed away. "Peep, peep," he whistled. "Look at me now." The others were very cross at being left behind. Away went Edward to get some coaches. "Be careful, Edward," said the coaches. "Don't bump and bang us like the other engines do." So Edward came up to the coaches very, very gently, and the shunter fastened the coupling. "Thank you, Edward," said the coaches. "That was kind. We are glad you are taking us today." And they went to the station, where the people were waiting. "Peep, peep," whistled Edward. "Get in quickly, please." So the people got in quickly, and Edward waited happily for the guard to blow his whistle and wave his green flag. He waited and waited. There was no whistle. No green flag. "Peep, peep, peep! Where is that guard?" Edward was getting anxious. The driver and fireman asked the station master, "Have you seen the guard?" "No," he said. They asked the porter, "Have you seen the guard?" "Yes, last night," said the porter. Edward began to get cross. "Are we ever going to start?" he said. Just then a little boy shouted, "Here he comes!" And there the guard was, running down the hill with flags in one hand and a sandwich in the other. He ran onto the platform, blew his whistle, jumped into his van. Edward puffed off. He did have a happy day. All the children ran to wave as he went past, and he met old friends at all the stations. He worked so hard that the driver promised to take him out again the next day. "I'm going out again tomorrow," he told the other engines that night in the shed. "What do you think of that?" But he didn't hear what they thought, for he was so tired and happy that he fell asleep at once. Our next story stop is Edward and Gordon. One of the engines in Edward's shed was called Gordon. He was very big and very proud. "You watch me this afternoon, little Edward," he boasted, "as I rush through with the express. That'll be a splendid sight for you." Just then his driver pulled the lever. "Goodbye, little Edward," said Gordon as he puffed away. "Look out for me this afternoon." Edward went off too, to do some shunting. Edward liked shunting. It was fun playing with the freight cars. He would come up quietly and give them a pull. "Oh, oh, 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 oh," screamed the freight cars. "Whatever is happening?" Then he would stop and the silly freight cars would go bump into each other. "Oh, oh, oh, oh," they cried again. Edward pushed them until they were running nicely, and when they weren't expecting it, he would stop. One of them would be sure to run into the other line. Edward played till there were no more freight cars. Then he stopped to rest. Presently, he heard a whistle. Gordon came puffing along, very slowly and very crossly. Instead of nice shiny coaches, he was pulling a lot of very dirty coal cars. "A goods train, a goods train, a goods train," he grumbled. "The shame of it, the shame of it, the shame of it." He went slowly through with the coal cars chattering and banging behind, He went slowly through with the coal cars clattering and banging behind him. Edward laughed and went to find some more freight cars. Soon afterwards, a porter came and spoke to his driver. "Gordon can't get up the hill. Will you take Edward and push him, please?" They found Gordon, halfway up the hill and very cross. His driver and fireman were talking to him severely. "You're not trying," they told him. "I can't do it," said Gordon. "The noisy freight cars hold an engine back so. If they were coaches, clean and sensible things, that come quietly, now that would be different." Edward's driver came up. "We're here to push," he said. "No use at all," said Gordon. "You wait and see," said Edward's driver. They brought the train back to the bottom of the hill. Edward came up behind the brake van, ready to push. "Peep, peep, I'm ready," said Edward. "Poop, poop, no good," grumbled Gordon. The guard blew his whistle, and they pulled and pushed as hard as they could. "I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it," puffed Gordon. "I will do it, I will do it, I will do it," puffed Edward. "I can't do it, I can't do it, I will do it, I can't do it, I will do it, I can't do it, I will do it," they puffed together. That was a lot of words at once. Edward pushed and puffed and Edward pushed and puffed and puffed and pushed as hard as he ever could. And before he realized it, Gordon found himself at the top of the hill. "I've done it! I've done it! I've done it!" he said proudly, and forgetting all about Edward pushing behind, he didn't wait to say thank you, but ran on so fast that he passed 2 stations before his driver could make him stop. Edward had pushed so hard that when he got to the top, he was out of breath. Gordon ran on so fast that Edward was left behind. The guard waved and waved, but Edward couldn't catch up. He ran on to the next station, and there the driver and fireman said they were very pleased with him. The fireman gave him a nice long drink of water, and the driver said, "I'll get out my paint tomorrow and give you a beautiful new coat of blue with red stripes. Then you'll be the smartest engine in the shed." Okay. The sad story of Henry. Once an engine attached to a train was afraid of a few drops of rain. It went into a tunnel and squeaked through its funnel and never came out again. The engine's name was Henry. His driver and fireman argued with him, but he would not move. "The rain will spoil my lovely green paint and red stripes," he said. The guard blew his whistle till he had no more breath and waved his flags till his arms ached, but Henry stayed in the tunnel and blew steam at him. "I'm not going to spoil my lovely green paint and red stripes for you," he said rudely. The passengers came and argued too, but Henry would not move. Sir Topham Hatt, a director who was on the train, told the guard to get a rope. "We will pull you out," he said. But Henry only blew steam at him and made him wet. They hooked the rope on and all pulled, except Sir Topham Hatt. "My doctor has forbidden me to pull." They pulled and pulled and pulled, but still Henry stayed in the tunnel. They then tried pushing from the other end. 1, 2, 3, push, but he did not help. "My doctor has forbidden me to push." They pushed and pushed, but still Henry stayed in the tunnel. At last another train came. The guard waved his red flag and stopped it. The 2 engine drivers, the 2 firemen, and the 2 guards went in and argued with Henry. "Look, it has stopped raining," they said. "Yes, but it'll begin again soon," said Henry. "And what would become of my green paint with red stripes then?" So they brought the other engine up, and it pushed and puffed and puffed. So they brought the other engine up, and it pushed and puffed and puffed and pushed as hard as it ever could, but Henry still stayed in the tunnel. So they gave it up. They told Henry, "We shall leave you here for always and always and always." They took up the old rails, built a wall in front of him, and cut a new tunnel. Now Henry can't get out. He watches the trains rushing through the new tunnel. He is very sad because no one will ever see his lovely green paint with red stripes again. But I think he deserved it. Don't you? Also, here's a fun fact. It's rumored, apparently there's a lot of speculation of the engine in this picture being James. And there's some people that say that this isn't James. And that it's apparently another, I guess, character called Eagle or something, from what I've heard. Yeah, I'm not too sure who that engine's supposed to be. I mean, it looks like James, but then again, I've heard a lot of people say it isn't. So yeah, I personally think it's not James, because if it was James, why would they go through the trouble of introducing him as a new character when an engine of his class was already introduced in this story? And it also helps that in this book, James is painted black before he gets his repaint. So why would they feature this engine unless it was one of James's cousins, I guess? That's my headcanon, at least. Anyway, onwards to our final story stop. Edward, Gordon, and Henry. Edward and Gordon often went through the tunnel where Henry was shut up. Edward would say, "Peep, peep, hello," and Gordon would say, "Poop, poop, poop, serves you right." Poor Henry had no steam to answer. His fire had gone out. Soot and dirt from the tunnel roof had spoiled his lovely green paint and red stripes anyway. He was cold and unhappy and wanted to come out and pull trains too. Gordon always pulled the express. He was proud of being the only engine strong enough to do it. There were many heavy coaches full of important people like Sir Topham Hatt, who had punished Henry. Gordon was seeing how fast he could go. "Hurry, hurry, hurry," he panted. "Trickety-truck, trickety-truck, trickety-truck," said the coaches. Gordon could see Henry's tunnel in front. In a minute he thought, "I'll poop at Henry," and then rushed through and out into the open again. Closer and closer he came. He was almost there when... wheesh! He was in a cloud of steam. And going slower and slower, his driver stopped the train. "What has happened to me?" said Gordon. "I feel so weak." "You've burst your safety valve," said the driver. "You can't pull the train anymore." "Oh dear," said Gordon. "We were going so nicely, too. Look at Henry laughing at me." Gordon made a face at Henry and blew smoke at him. Everybody got out and came to see Gordon. "Humph," said Sir Topham Hatt. "I never liked these big engines. Always go wrong. Send for another engine at once." While the guard went to find one, they uncoupled Gordon and ran him on a siding, out of the way. The only engine left in the shed was Edward. "I'll come and try," he said. Gordon saw him coming. "That's no use," he said. "Edward can't pull the train." Edward puffed and pulled and pulled and puffed, but he couldn't move the heavy coaches. "I told you so," said Gordon rudely. "Why not let Henry try?" "Yes," said Sir Topham Hatt. "I will. Will you help pull this train, Henry?" he asked. "Yes," said Henry at once. So Gordon's driver and fireman lit his fire. Some plate layers broke down the wall and put back the rails. And when he had steam up, Henry puffed out. He was dirty, his boiler was black, and he was covered with cobwebs. "Ooh, I'm so stiff, he groaned. "You'd better have a run to ease your joints and find a turntable," said Sir Topham Hatt kindly. Henry came back feeling better. and they put him in front. Peep, peep, said Edward, I'm ready. Peep, 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 said Henry, so am I. Pull hard, pull hard, pull hard, puffed Edward. Hold on. Pull hard, pull hard, pull hard, puffed Edward. We'll do it, we'll do it, we'll do it, puffed Henry. Pull hard, we'll do it, pull hard, we'll do it, pull hard, we'll do it. They puffed together. The heavy coaches jerked and began to move, slowly at first, then faster and faster. We've done it together, we've done it together, we've done it together, said Edward and Henry. You've done it, hooray, you've done it, hooray, you've done it, hooray, sang the coaches. All the passengers were excited. Sir Topham Hatt leaned out of the window to wave at Edward and Henry, but the train was going so fast that his hat blew off to a field where a goat ate it for his lunch. They stopped till they came to the big station at the end of the line. The passengers all got out and said thank you, and Sir Topham Hatt promised Henry a new coat to paint. Would you like blue and red? Yes, please, said Henry, then I'll be like Edward. Edward and Henry went home quietly, and on their way, they helped Gordon back to the shed. All three engines were now great friends. Wasn't Henry pleased when he had his new coat? He is very proud of it, as all good engines are. He doesn't mind the rain now, because he knows the best way to keep his paint dry is to not run into any tunnels, but to ask his driver to rub him down when the day's work is over. Alright, and that is the final story of this video. Tune in next time where we read these 4 sets of stories. Thomas the Tank Engine. Alright, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Imageworks out. I just wanted to also mention that today is the 24th anniversary of Thomas and the Magic Railroad. Happy 24th!